I'm Kel Myers and this is Phoenix Sound. In a world on fire, how do we still find love and joy? In a world filled with forces hell-bent on tearing us apart, how do we forge genuine connection and make sure others can too? In a world where cruelty is commoditised, how can we learn to be kind to each other again? My guest today understands deeply that kindness is more than a nicety, it's a necessity, a radical act of rebellion and a revival we all desperately need. Today, I'm joined by Mansi, the ripple maker, whose handmade tokens are sparking a kindness revolution across the globe. From Sydney to San Francisco, igniting cascades of love and connection for those crushed by isolation and feeling the weight of being unseen the most. We'll explore three truths: the power that can be held within one well-intentioned gesture to shatter the chains of loneliness and pain in an instant. We talk about how creativity fuels our rebirth as women and why real connection buries shallow virtual likes, regardless of whether you've got hundreds of followers or hundreds of thousands. Stay with us. Hi Mansi, how you going?
Hi Kel, I'm doing well.
Welcome to Phoenix Sound, and it's a pleasure to have you here, Mansi, because I really felt quite moved by a lot of the things you were posting, particularly around collection time, and I just felt just a gut feeling. I'm very kind of gut-led, and I try and follow my intuition as much as possible, and it tends to never fail me, and I just was like, I should reach out to Mansi. She's really interesting, and I love what she's doing. And, you know, for our audience, Mansi and I connected on Substack, where she writes a really introspective, heartfelt newsletter called Little Tokens of Love, which is great. Everyone go and check that out, because it's really beautiful what you're doing, Mansi. And I'd really love to start there, if that's okay, with the spark and what kind of inspired you to do this, because I think we're kind of like leaning on the need to orient ourselves around the right things. So yeah, I'd love to find out what inspired you and also how Substack has helped you share and express yourself.
Well, thank you, first of all, Kel, for having me and for trusting your gut and intuition. I'm very intuition-based myself. And I do believe the same thing that you said, that my gut has yet to fail me. It's when I stop listening to the whispers of my heart is usually when I find myself in a territory that feels very unfamiliar. When I go with my intuition and I forget about the shoulds and the must-haves and all of that stuff, I find myself more at peace. And I actually changed my Substack name to the Ripple Maker very recently, and I did it very mindfully because I felt like I was no longer on Substack. I came into Substack as an artist, but while being on Substack and sharing some of the more introspective stories that I've been writing about, the personal essays, I realized that I'm actually going back to my roots of being a writer. And words can have as much of a ripple effect as art can. And my idea is to share both, is to share how art can be transformative in healing, in connecting with other people, but also how words can give just your expressions, your own thoughts, some meaning, some value. And what the Ripple Maker is about and how my journey started was with handing out small handmade tokens of appreciation. In our local community, it started with baristas, with cashiers, with janitors, with people that melt into the background that we don't even notice that are there. And the sad part to me was that we only ask for their names when we want to complain about something to their supervisor. And that just felt wrong. Like, why do we want to know a person's name only when we want to complain? Why don't we ask them, hey, what's your name? How's your day going? Or thank them. We usually don't do that. And so I think what it kind of grew into, I've been doing this for 7 years now. And what it's grown into is this daily practice of presence, of noticing those around us, and then taking it a bit further and telling a story around that, and encouraging others to become part of what I am hoping will become a movement in kindness, so we can share these glimpses of everyday human connection and do our own little bits in our own little corners of the world. And where Substack kind of comes into this is I was very Instagram and Facebook focused. It was interesting, we went to Australia and New Zealand in December, and I deleted both those apps from my phone with the intention of being fully present with my daughter and my husband during the duration of the trip. And I realized when we came back that I didn't miss it. And interestingly enough, nobody missed me. I have over 10,000 subscribers if you combine all three platforms, YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. And only 2 people actually reached out to me and asked if I was okay. And that made me think, I I don't need that. And I don't need that superficial kind of connection, because it really isn't connection. I'm on Facebook and Instagram keeping tabs on people, but I'm not really engaging with them. I'm just kind of giving them a heart and moving on and scrolling by. But Substack as a platform just inherently has that capacity and ability for more deep, meaningful engagement, to actually have conversations. And it's not just surface level interaction, and it's not algorithm driven content. And nobody's making money off of it in that sense. So I think that's kind of where the platform gives me more of my voice and a confidence that, hey, I can do this, and I can make more substantial connections with people who care about kindness, who care about slowing down and noticing, and who want to become part of this movement.
Yeah, wow, that's so powerful. I'm just thinking about what you just said around art being transformative and words giving those things value and meaning, and it's so true. And like you said, Substack is it's unique in that way, isn't it? As a platform, it's not Facebook. It's not very much a place where people are exploring often fringe ideas that are kind of outside the mainstream. That's true, and I'm sure there's misinformation on there because there's misinformation everywhere. But
Everything, yeah.
but as a whole, it is a really kind of refreshing culture shift that's happening on Substack. You can feel that, and people will write, really in-depth essays on an area of interest that maybe isn't getting as much light shed on it. And as you said, it's really important to make people who are normally kind of in the background feel seen, and I love that, and help them realize that they matter too. It doesn't matter how much money you've got or what class you are. We're all human beings at the end of the day. And I love the way that you highlight that common humanity and the need for that, because we're all so divided. And I feel like that's kind of getting worse and worse. And we really need to remember, I think, at times that we are all human beings, and just kind of recognize that we all share something, and that's the soul. And yeah, finding ways to connect art is such a powerful tool in that sense.
The one thing that you're saying, it's kind of in America, especially right now. I think what it's highlighting for me, these interactions, these daily interactions, is basic human decency. What you said about seeing other people as human, seeing beyond their uniforms, their aprons, their tags. It's, let's not label them as, that's a janitor. I don't have conversations with a janitor. That's a bus driver. I'm not going to have a conversation with a bus driver. Let's stop limiting ourselves from having that human to human interaction, that human to human connection, because that person who is a janitor is also someone's uncle, is also someone's grandfather, is also someone's husband.
Yeah, true. So true. It's so true. When we make room for that in our lives, when we make room for those unexpected moments of connection, there's nothing like it, is there? The joy that you can experience, the kind of the serendipity of bumping into someone and sharing a moment together is what life's all about, isn't it, really?
Exactly.
And it's beautiful the way it can unfold when we open our hearts in that way. And yeah, I'd love to know what's been like the most rewarding or unexpected moment of connection you've experienced through going on this journey.
Well, really, so many, in the 7 years that I've been doing this, I've handed out over 1,000 of these tokens. They've landed everywhere from Paris to Jamaica to within our Los Altos community here, and all over on our flights, handing them out. And I've had people starting to follow me, ask me about my website. I never used to put my website on my tokens because I don't want anything in return. That was the whole idea behind it. It's a piece of artwork that I have spent time making. These are not discards. These are not scraps of paper that I am parting away with because I don't have space for them in my house. It's not that. It's very intentional art making. I pour myself into each piece. I spend an hour and a half sometimes on one little token. They're not big. They're about a bookmark sized. But what I've come to realize is that people keep them. And the one story that keeps coming back to me, I mean, I have so many, but this one especially stands out because I had just started out, this was about 5 years ago, this practice, and my art was very rudimentary at that time. And I think this daily practice has given me more of a confidence to call myself an artist, which I didn't feel I was 5 years ago. So I was just doing little simple doodles and handing them out. They were not masterpieces. They were not something I would imagine anybody would save. And I went for my mammogram, and the technician, she warmed her hands. She apologized in advance, and she said, "I'm sorry, my hands are cold, but I do have this heated gown for you." And, to be enveloped in that warmth of that heated gown in a place, in a space of time where you're feeling very stressed out and very invaded, it's such a small gesture. But just the fact she took the time to explain beforehand, my hands are cold and all that stuff. And then as I was getting dressed, I asked her name and I said, well, I made this and I would like to give this to you as a token of appreciation and gratitude. And she looked at me stunned and she said, you're seriously just giving me your art? And I said, I am. And she said, oh my gosh, I've only ever had people complain to me as they're leaving. My hands were too cold, the machine was too tight, or I didn't move them properly, or I pressed too hard. This is the first time somebody's leaving here and saying thank you. And that in itself made me cry and then weepy-eyed. It kind of hit me really hard that, hey, this person's doing their job. They're trying to do their best to make it as comfortable as possible for you. And you're leaving them with that. It just felt so wrong. But then that woman, as I was leaving, she said, hey, do you have a Facebook? And I said, yes, you can find me at Mansi Makes. And she actually messaged me. She became a follower. I went back for a repeat mammogram 3 years later, and I got her as the tech again. And guess what? She had saved the little scrap of paper in her wallet. Wow. And she said every time somebody left with a complaint, she got that out. She looked at it and she said, I matter. What I do matters, and somebody out there appreciates me.
That's so beautiful.
And this is just one story. I have received emails from people who've gotten it. There was Kayla, she was the farmer's market manager, and I handed her a thank you token once. She emailed me, I think 3 years after the fact, and she said, I still have that sitting at my work desk, and every time I have a hard day, I look at that and I remind myself that what I'm doing makes a difference. That's the power of these, and that's why, I'm writing a book about this, Little Tokens of Love, Big Ripples of Happiness, because I do think that the ripples are, it's what we forget. It might not come back and touch us, but it will touch someone else in such a meaningful way that we cannot even comprehend it. We just have to go ahead and do the kind thing, do the right thing, and let the ripples ripple outwards and touch other lives.
Yeah, I love this idea of the ripple effect. I've actually been using that phrase myself with regards to a lot of things, with regards to like endometriosis, knowledge and education, women's rights, just, it is, isn't it? It's like you just don't know how things are going to move out and expand, and we can never fully control that. Just like when you throw a stone in the lake, you can't ever predict the ripples and how big they're going to be or small or how many there's going to be, and that you've just got to kind of trust the universe, don't you, that it's going to take care of it from there when you're doing the right thing. And it's really beautiful to show that level of generosity at a time when it is so scarce. And I think particularly for women as well, and I'd love to get your thoughts on how you think creativity helps women in particular to feel seen, feel valued, and find that deeper sense of connection with themselves and also with the world around them. What do you think it is particularly about creativity that women find so appealing?
I don't know if my audience is mostly women. Mine, what would they call in the world of marketing target demographic is it's 98% women, and it's women who are above the age of 45. I'm 46 myself, but my demographic always has skewed older. I do not know the reason for that. Maybe it's because these are the women that I appeal to actually have the time to listen to my messages and have the time to act on them, because women younger than that are just hard pressed to make time for themselves. And I think what creativity does is allow women that time to reclaim some of that space and that time for themselves, which feels very selfish. But again, coming back to that ripple effect, when you're able to make that selfish time for yourself, what it does for you has a ripple effect on everybody whose lives you touch. Because you're happier, your kids are going to be happier, your home is going to be happier, your colleagues are going to be happier. Everybody that you touch is going to be affected by that selfish thing that you did of reclaiming space for yourself. And I think creativity is an invitation to play. Where I come from, it doesn't have a purpose, it doesn't have an agenda. It's just for the sake of immersing yourself in the process. It's not about the product.
Yeah.
It's about noticing, it's about making, it's about if you're willing to, and if you feel called to, sharing what you make. And I think when we create, the way we slow down, we start noticing things, not just around us, but inside of us a little bit differently. And I think it kind of opens those cracks a bit wider, where we're able to give ourselves more grace and, forgive ourselves a little bit more in that space, and just say, hey, this doesn't have to mean anything. I'm just taking some time out to create something. That's it. It doesn't have to have a purpose. As women, we just don't get that. And we're always kind of held to a higher standard than men for some reason. I do not know why, even though we do the most thankless jobs for the most part, especially as mothers. And I feel like if we do something selfish like this, where we take that time and do something creative with it, it's just so much better for our own mental and physical health. But we just don't get that. That's why it's so much more important for women to fight for it.
Yeah, definitely. I've been thinking a lot about, with March being Endometriosis Awareness Month, like how we can just take a different tact and also bring more creativity into our lives. And I think that's a really important point, that it's not about having an agenda. It's not about, target demographics instead, and building avatars and, doing content calendars and, posting a million times a day. It's about expression. It's about getting in touch with what's within, and going to that mindful place and listening to that little voice within and spending time with that. And that's a good thing. And as you said, like that ripple effect of doing that and having that time ripples out in a positive way to everyone in your life anyway. So it's a win-win. And yeah, as someone that experiences, quite severe endometriosis pain at times, I can say that creativity, like for me, poetry, that's my outlet. I write poetry, and sometimes I share it, sometimes I don't, but it's mostly just for me, as a way for me to make sense of the world and of myself. And I think it's just, such a powerful form of healing. And yeah, I think sometimes, people can be skeptical about things like that, things like meditation and alternative therapies, let's say. But yeah, I definitely see the power in creating and making that a practice, just for the sake of healing and the sake of saying, hey, I made something, I put it out in the universe.
And sometimes, Kel, it doesn't even have to be that. We overcomplicate it in our heads. We don't have to go to a yoga class. We don't have to play Zen music. We can just walk out houses. You don't even have to have a podcast. You just walk out in nature for 10 minutes, listen to the birds chirping, notice if there are any blooming. Just that. Just give yourselves 10 minutes of that and see how much that helps. I mean, that can be creativity in a different way.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. Like, we've got some beautiful beds around here, and this time of year they're all kind of a bit broody. It's kind of funny. One of the beds has been like hitting the back of our window in because it's seeing its reflection, and it's like, some days the poor thing's like just banging into the glass, and it's finally found a mate now, so that's good. But we've got some beautiful parrots, and like the rosellas, they're so stunning, and it's so gorgeous just to walk out and hear them sing. And when you're around them a lot, you hear the different voices, and you get used to that. And it's such a beautiful way to just, slow everything down, as you say, and just have a minute, just take life in and realize that we're part of a bigger picture, and it's not just all about us. And a human-centric focus in the world, kind of like we forget that we're part of this bigger web of life,
Yeah.
That's a really good point. I'm curious to know, like, obviously being vulnerable and sharing your story, as you say, you write personal essays and express yourself that way. How do you, or do you even think about this, considering how the conversation's going? Do you consider like how you balance like the personal and what's private with what's like universal? Because I know for me, I've shared my own story and journey with Endo in like national news. And it was hard. It was hard to go to that personal place, but I felt a sense of transformation from doing it. I felt stronger from putting that out there. But equally, there are some things that I wouldn't necessarily share, because I just feel like they're a bit too kind of private, and I don't want to share intimate things about my health with people I don't know. So I'm wondering what your take is on that, on that balance of sharing your story whilst also, protecting your boundaries and kind of your own personal space.
Couple of ways I do it. I don't think it's about sharing everything. I think it's about sharing the right things in a way that makes space for the reader's experience also. And not to say that I'm filtering what I'm writing to make it engaging for the reader. I also, when I write, I think of one person. I don't think about the 2,400 subscribers I have on Substack. I'm not writing to all 2,400 of them. I'm writing to one person. And if it connects deeply with one person, that's enough for me. And My writing has gone to very dark places where I have shared very intimate details about my childhood abuse and about the lack of a relationship that I have with my mother and how it has informed the way I parent my child. And those are intensely personal things. I recently wrote an essay about the relationship my husband and I have had and how it's changed over time, the discussions we've had about doing versus being. And, through all of these, there is that thread of things that are very personal that I have chosen to share. But then there are many things that are just not for public consumption. And I think every person reaches that sense of what they keep to themselves versus what they share in their own way, whatever feels comfortable to them. I don't want people doing a running commentary or giving me advice on certain things. And so if I do share something of that nature where I think that it might be me kind of asking for it in a way, I actually will turn off comments on that post. I will only invite people to email me their thoughts.
Mm.
There are ways you can have those boundaries because you don't want people trolling you. I've had my fair share of that on Instagram and Facebook. And I don't care for trolls. I don't have time for them. But also realized that it does affect me very deeply when I am that vulnerable and I put myself out there in the world, kind of bare and exposed and, in all my feelings. I don't want to feel attacked after that. What I am hoping from that is a sense of catharsis, which I do get when I put those things in writing, but also more of a sense of connectedness. I don't feel alone when I'm sharing these things. And I think that's what other people get out of it too. Sometimes I will get emails back from readers saying, wow, you articulated this for me in a way that I never could. And thank you for helping understand me. I don't know what their life situation is, but somehow by reading my words, they felt heard and they felt seen. And I think that's what kind of keeps me going. That's why I don't want to stop sharing the personal stories, but I also want to be cognizant of protecting myself from things I don't want entering into my life and making that experience not feel joyous to me.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. I love that. I'll definitely give some thought to that. And I know our audience as well, that can be a struggle at times when you have been vulnerable, and then kind of what do you do in the aftermath, and what can you do to control who has access to you and who can hurt you, quote unquote, and yeah, taking necessary measures to protect ourselves, because yeah, it's not easy to be vulnerable. And you speak so eloquently, Mansi. I can see why people gravitate to you as someone who can be a voice for them, for those who can't necessarily express themselves with words the way that you can. And
I think, something else that I have started doing is kind of add a footnote at the end of some of those personal posts and said that if you feel moved enough to write to me, I would appreciate it, but please remember to be kind.
mm, yeah.
And I think that kind of gives people a pause that are, because sometimes people are just like happy typing things into the keyboard because they feel like, okay, they're faceless, they can just say whatever. And I also feel Substack is not the kind of platform that encourages that. Substack feels a little bit more genuine, more authentic, more real in that sense, that the interactions, because they're longer, because they're deeper conversations, because people are writing long missives in response, it's not a one sentence response to my post. It's usually 3 or 4 paragraphs, and people are sharing their own life stories and connecting in a much deeper way. That kind of, I don't know how Substack has done it, but it's kind of managed to keep those trolls away.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, I can definitely attest to that too. It does feel like that. And like you say, people are in a different mindset, just literally from, love hearting and liking things and being in that dopamine mind to sitting and writing thoughtful paragraphs. I think they're a completely different part of the brain that's being engaged there. And it comes across with the content quality, definitely. Yeah. Yeah, interesting. Thinking about creative blocks and moments of doubt. And I know so many of us have that when it comes to sharing our voices and accessing those parts of ourselves that, we want to transform, but it feels too scary. But as you say, there can be catharsis in that metamorphosis. And yeah, I love that you turn to your audience in that service and what can you do for them in those moments of doubt, and knowing that you're transforming people's lives even when you don't feel great in yourself. And I can definitely attest to that. There's been times when before an episode on the podcast, I've had to have quite a long bath because I've been having a flare up, and then thinking, doubting myself, and then just realizing I am who I am. I'm just going to do the best I can. I'll show up, and that's all I need to do. As long as I show up, I'm doing the best I can. And like you said earlier about women being held to this higher standard of perfection. And I think we really need to kind of go easy on ourselves and realize we're doing the best we can.
Well, I love that you talk so authentically and you put that pain forward. You don't shy away from it. You talk about it. Your most recent post, I just emailed you about the endometriosis that you wrote, that you have to be your own best self-advocates. You have to be loud. You have to make it known because it's not hunky-dory. It's not a rosy situation, and nobody's going to go out there and fight the battle for you.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing. If we want change, we need to kind of not settle for the same cycles. I know it sounds obvious, but when it comes to this Endo Awareness Month, it kind of feels like Chinese water torture sometimes. It's like, here we go again, and nothing really changing. It's like, it's torturous to not see, real action being taken and not seeing, this kind of medical injustice being met with the level of urgency that's required really to correct things. We're talking about 10% of women who are, suffering for years, decades. And yeah, I do my best. So thank you for saying that, Mansi. I appreciate it. That's kind of you to say that.
Well, no, I think each one of us needs to do that. We need to be that voice. And I see that's the same thing for my kindness initiative, I cannot expect people to go out there on a limb. As an adult, it's very hard to walk up to another adult who is a stranger and even say something nice to them. It just feels awkward. I don't know how society has managed to ingrain in us that awkwardness, but it takes courage. It takes a lot of courage. I've had so many women over the last 7 years take my workshops, make the tokens, spend the time, and never hand a single one out because I tell them, I don't want you to leave it anonymously. I don't want you to leave it behind for someone to discover. This is not a happenstance. I want you to make eye contact. I want you to talk to that person. I want you to ask them their name. I want you to personalize that token of appreciation and have that human to human connection. And my goodness, it freaks people out. And I think that, that's what I have taken upon myself as my charge, that we need to overcome this. We need to start seeing other humans as humans. And I think that goes back to your point of how a disease that impacts only women becomes faceless because there are no personal stories being told about it. Mm-hmm. And once you start getting to know people who are suffering, it's a completely different story then. You get invested. You want to help make that change.
Yeah, that's so true. Like you say, the ripple effect,
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Yeah, and it just comes down to knowing people, getting to know them. It's when you care enough to take a moment.
Yeah.
Just pause, take a moment. That's all it takes.
Wait, I was just thinking, imagine if like everyone did that every day, like once a day, everyone, or even once a week. If once a week, every single human did that, gave someone something and made eye contact and said, this is for you, I want you to feel seen. I think the world would be a lot kinder of a place and a lot happier of a place. I think we'd have reductions in a lot of mental illness. And yeah, I think the loneliness epidemic could really benefit from some of these kind of creative strategies, really. We can't just keep handing out pills and saying, good luck. Yeah, it really is, a job that everyone needs to kind of take on as their own responsibility to kind of bring us all back together. So thanks, Mansi, for being a leader in that way around creativity and connection, because it's important that we all feel seen. And you can really feel that today that a lot of people don't. They don't feel seen.
I wanted to say one more thing, and I think the biggest thing, but we don't want to make a fool of ourselves. I think that's what it comes down to, that we're so afraid of rejection. We feel embarrassment. And I can tell you without hesitation, in the last 7 years of handing out these tokens, no matter which country we were in, no matter what language those people spoke, we were in Cologne at one point, and I don't know any German, they didn't know any English. We were in a very remote part near Cologne. And I handed these out and I wrote donkey on them because I knew they would understand that. I got hugs, I got hugs from them. In the 7 years, not one of my tokens has been trashed. Not one person has said, I don't want this, no thank you, and given it back to me. Not one person has critiqued my art. It's not about the art. Really, that's what it boils down to. It's about that person feeling, as you said, feeling seen, feeling valued, feeling noticed, that, hey, somebody actually sees me as a human.
Yeah.
And we just need to get over ourselves.
Yeah, that's it. It's the ego, isn't it? It's like, I don't want to look silly. I don't want to be vulnerable. I don't want this to be awkward. You know, like Brene Brown says, awkward, brave, and kind. And the importance of, just sometimes, you're going to stumble, you're going to fall. But yeah, I'll tell you, my partner has taught me a lot about this, about just kind of like not taking yourself too seriously when, when you do trip up on the street kind of thing. Just being like, whatever, laugh if you want.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's what makes you human. It's all these failings, it's all these imperfections. It's what makes us human.
That make us who we are and make us interesting and make us, yeah. And I think it'd be good to end on that and your take for anyone out there that is struggling to feel seen, that doesn't feel connected right now, to change that. Do you think?
I think connect with yourself first. I think start there.
Yeah.
I would say return to noticing and don't let doubt creep in. Go back inwards. And, that's what I always do, is go back inwards to curiosity, to play, to channel that 3-year-old within me and to just be her, because my 3-year-old version was not constrained by anything.
I love that. Yeah, that's beautiful. It's been such a pleasure connecting with you, Mansi. I can't believe how time's flown today. I think the world really needs more light and love. It really does. And I just love the way that you keep shining, and I really wish you all the best with the Ripple Maker and the book as well. And if you'd like to come back on and chat about that when it's published, or when you're due to publish, I'm more than happy to have you back on. I'd love that.
Well, thank you. I'm so grateful for that. And I'm also very grateful for this opportunity to not just share what I do, but hopefully empower everyone to do their part too, because all of us can be the light.
Absolutely. That's it. That's a good way to end. I think we're all the light. Yeah, that's beautiful. Thanks, Mansi. I really appreciate your time today.
Well, thank you, Kel. I appreciate your making the time too. This has been so wonderful to just connect, and I hope to stay, we can email each other and stay connected. And the book is going to launch in spring 2026. I'll keep you updated on how that goes. But in the meantime, just kind of keep showing up, like you said, every day.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll make sure that everyone can access the Ripple Maker and all the information around where to find you in the show notes, so people can connect and be a part of the beautiful community that you're cultivating there. So yeah, all the best, Mansi. And yeah, I'll be in touch for sure.
Thank you, Kel. You have a wonderful day ahead.
And love to your family as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.
And that, dear listeners, brings to close my conversation with Mansi, the Ripple Maker, who is showing us firsthand how kindness can help us to heal from the inside out. Endo warriors and fellow women, I really encourage you to take Mansi's challenge. Try one small act of kindness this week, whether it's a note, a smile, a stranger, or sharing a creative spark. Share your ripple on X or Substack at Phoenix Sound Pod. As I reflect on this conversation with Mansi, I'm reminded that even in our darkest days of unrelenting pain, a single hopeful gesture can light up somebody's way. And in doing so, we illuminate the path for everyone. To find out more about Mansi's work, head to mansimakes.com. Until next time, I'm Kel Myers, and this is Phoenix Sound.